Why do 70% of all change initiatives fail? It's rarely a lack of talent or bad strategy. What's actually happening is a psychological shutdown, a phenomena I call fear-induced loss of commitment and knowledge, or fear lock for short. See, when a team is under stress from an impending change, which is perceived as a threat, their brains literally lose the ability to stay committed to the goal or apply the knowledge they already have. Now, they aren't being difficult. They're experiencing a mental blackout born of fear of the unknown. So today, I'm giving you the flight framework to break that blackout and get your team back on mission. And we start with the F in flight. Frame the message. Now, think of a physical picture frame. A good frame just doesn't hold the art. It highlights it. It makes the image easier to see and understand. Framing a message works the exact same way. It allows your team to see the problem clearly and understand why a shift is necessary. Without a frame, the reasons for change remain unknown, and the human brain fears the unknown because it's impossible to prepare for it. To your autonomic system, the unknown is dangerous. It feels like a predator in the bushes, and that is when the survival reflex kicks in. So framing is the tool that makes the unknown known. It neutralizes the fear response before it can take over. But this only works if the message is accessible. If you tell your team you're changing to increase shareholder value, well, you've already lost them. They don't live with the shareholders. They live with the daily grind. But if you say, we're changing because our current structure is too rigid and it's making your jobs harder, well, they likely feel that rigidity every day and they'll connect immediately. So once the problem is accessible, you've managed that initial G load. I use the term G-load because the concept of fear lock was inspired by a phenomenon I experienced in the cockpit of my F-14. It's called G-lock, or G-induced loss of consciousness. And it's when the stress of high G forces from abrupt maneuvering drains the blood from your brain. In your peripheral vision, it narrows until everything finally goes black and you lose consciousness. Well, just like in the cockpit, maneuvering an organization into an abrupt change triggers that fear lock reflex. Now, I learned this running a telecom operations department where we used to schedule technicians in a physical book using pencils, and it was a major bottleneck. Only one person can book at a time, and the appointments were always being erased accidentally by each other. So I moved us to an online calendar and flipped the switch. Well, even though I had framed the change, my most senior customer service rep immediately transferred to sales, and she left because she was terrified. I expected perfection from hour one. So look what happens inside your organization when change is announced without a frame. Now, you may see efficiency, but your team sees a threat and they respond with fight, flight, or freeze. Now, fight, that shows up as aggression. People actively undermine the change efforts. They argue why it won't work. They spread false narratives, and they willfully allow issues to manifest so they can say, I told you so. Flight shows up as evasion, where fight is aggressive, flight, well, that's quiet. People check out and quietly quit. They provide no input. They become busy doing low-value tasks to avoid the real mission, and they retreat into the silos of their own specialties. Finally, freeze. Freeze is paralysis. They take no initiative. When asked for input, they have nothing to give. They stay frozen in the past ways, waiting for the other shoe to drop instead of proactively preventing it. That senior CSR of mine, well, she took flight. And regardless of the response, you've lost the creativity needed to complete the mission. Your team is in fear lock. Now, if you're realizing your current communication style is triggering this shutdown, go ahead and download my free Locked On Radical Accountability Tactics Guide using the link in the video description. It has the flight framework and many more like it. And then while you're there, like this video and subscribe. Join the movement to build a culture of radical accountability. Well, framing is not enough. To prevent mission failure requires running the rest of the flight checklist. So the L in flight is lay the groundwork. Back in the telecom office, I had identified the root cause. The physical book was the bottleneck. And laying the groundwork means showing the team how the change will improve things. See, context creates safety. And I needed to show my CSR that the software wasn't just a new rule. It was rather a tool that will eliminate the missed appointments caused by accidental erasers. Now, the next is I, inspect for bias. And this is where I really failed at CSR. See, you must surface and address emotional responses, both theirs as well as your own. A common leadership bias is assuming the team understands the why simply because you've been thinking about it for weeks or maybe months, but they've only been hearing it for a little while, for a short time. See, I never communicated that I expected the kinks in the new system, so she assumed I expected perfection from day one. Fear responses must be addressed directly where they fester and grow. And when you acknowledge their reality and their concerns, you're actually signaling safety. And that's how the lock breaks. Now, once bias has been addressed, it's time to move on. G, guide with structure. And this is where you deliver the actual how. When things are changing, people crave order, and your message must follow a sequence: purpose, change, timeline, support. My CSR needed to see the timeline for the transition and know exactly what support was available when the kinks inevitably happen. See, structure is the flight plan that keeps your formation intact, and without it, communication becomes turbulence. The H in flight is harness feedback. And this is what ultimately saves your initiative because no plan survives contact with reality. Harnessing feedback isn't about being nice, it's tactical intelligence. You need the team's eyes on the ground to identify the friction points you can't see from the front office. If I had asked for my CSR's input on the cutover, she probably would have asked how to handle mistakes or what standard of performance I was expecting. See, when people understand the what and the why, and they see that you're open to their input on the how, well, they don't just follow the plan, they improve it. Last, we have T for tone awareness. You have to match the emotional state of the room. If the room is anxious or skeptical, don't lead with corporate hype. People can smell a lack of sincerity for miles. Instead, lead with steadiness. Be calm. Be professional. Be certain. Your tone is the radio frequency that tells the team whether the mission is under control or spinning out of it. Now, here's the mindset shift I promised you earlier on. Ready? Communication is the sole responsibility of the leader. That's right. If your team is stuck in fear lock, it's not because they're stubborn. It's because you didn't take ownership of ensuring the message was received, not just delivered. See, your job is to drive clarity. I never blame my CSR for leaving. I knew I had made a mistake. Months later, when she told me why she transferred, I discovered what it was. Most leaders think their job is to talk, but in reality, your job is to manage the psychological state of your organization. And when you use the flight framework, you keep the blood in their brains so they can do the work you hired them to do. And you move from compliance to commitment. See, trust is the fuel for high performing teams. And once you burn it on a poorly communicated whim, it's incredibly hard to refuel. So stop the blackouts, start leading with clarity, and subscribe to join the movement. Go ahead and watch the next video right here, and I'll see you on the next mission.